Why is our generation so critical of today's music? That's right. Why is our generation so critical of today's music? This is Henry Clark's channel, and my channel is Senior Musicians Unite. Senior musicians like us, like myself, right? We are super critical of today's music, and we really are. I think there's some things we need to think about though. And in this particular video also, I want you guys to load up the comments, just load the comments up with your own perspective on why you think we don't like music that's out today. But a few things immediately come to mind, right? One is that we've got that nostalgia factor, right? We are so nostalgic this time. We like what we grew up with. We partied, we dated, we drove our cars, we got married, we got divorced. But there's music that gives us that nostalgia factor, and this happens in every generation, of course. So there's that older music kind of emotes a certain feeling of us, whether it be happiness or sadness or whatever, and we just can't relate to today's music. It's just not the same. We don't have that connection. And then you talk about cultural shifts, right? The culture is different, of course, as culture changes. When I grew up, right, it was kind of like post-Vietnam or Vietnam era, and just different things that go along with that. Today, of course, you've got the Iraqi war generation, and of course we have the me first generation. A lot of kids are in the me first generation, so it's kind of hard for us to relate to that. And we've got the video game and the TikTok generation also. We didn't have that during our day. What happened is that you had three channels. You didn't have a lot of cable TV at the time. You had three channels, and you looked at those channels, and that's where you kind of got your music from if it was on video until MTV came out. Then you kind of, they rolled it, 24 hours a day. And of course, they had these huge, complex videos, right? That cost millions of dollars, right? Now everything is about a 30-second video, that's on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. So there's been a huge cultural shift. And of course, how much music can you really get, in 30 seconds? It's just not that much. So that's another reason why we're not, crazy about the generation of music today, right? Also, sound has evolved. Sound has evolved. Today's generation is about a click track, a drum loop or whatever. That's kind of a lot of the music today, and of course, even country has gone more pop. It's not the same solid country that we had back in our day. And the sound has just evolved compared to today's, when we grew up, right? And you had these huge bands. You had Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago at Tower Power, man. They had these huge horn sections where these guys, I'm telling you, this was great music at that time, and you just don't have that today. Of course, and part of that's budget also. Record companies, they're just not prepared to invest like they did, back in the day. But sound has actually evolved, right, to the point where those instruments are no longer in today's records. They don't even use them a lot anymore. Just doesn't happen a lot. I'm not talking about a tribute band. I'm talking about just new music that's out. It's just not that prevalent. And of course, that kind of takes us into the generation gap. So yeah, we've got a generation gap. We're going to always have a generation gap. We had it in our day between our parents, and the younger generation of listening to, Motown and Chuck Berry and the Beatles and stuff like that, right? Our generation, our parents probably couldn't relate to that the same way. And again, and we have the same issue with listening to a lot of the stuff that's out now, The Weeknd and people like that. We just don't have that same, that we just don't have that same appreciation. And it's understandable, but there is a generation gap. It's going to always be a generation gap. You just can't get around that. Also, we're kind of resistant to change, but that's nothing new either, right? We're just, as an older generation, we're not ready to really totally, adopt a lot of the stuff that's out now. We're just not comfortable with it. We don't want to learn it either. A lot of our generation are not riding around in EVs. That's the new thing. You've got our generation that says, I've got my 66 Chevelle and I want to keep it. And that's true. I have a classic Mercedes that stays in the garage. I'm not a big EV guy either, but that's we just kind of resist that change, even though until the change comes onto us to the point we can no longer fight it. So we kind of resistant to change, and that's normal for any generation, to be resistant to change. But from a music perspective, though, we are definitely, resistant to change. But again, that's pretty normal. Also, we don't have any familiarity with these people today. We don't. I mean, we don't listen to. I mean, probably not of you. A lot of you guys don't listen to Taylor Swift, who is the number one pop star in the world. I don't think I have one song by Taylor Swift, not one song. It doesn't mean she's a good artist or a bad artist. I'm just saying that I'm not familiar with Taylor Swift's music. I'm not familiar with The Weeknd. I'm just not familiar with a lot of that music. I don't listen to it. I just don't have that familiarity, right? I think I should open my aperture a bit, and let some of it in to see if I really like it or not. But familiarity, I just don't have it. And of course, also, we don't listen to the radio today like we did in the past. You had your favorite station and your favorite DJ, now, and I think it's really bad, but now, radio is controlled by a corporation, and the corporation just determines what the playlist is, and they actually have, a couple of hundred stations. So the role of the local DJ or the city DJ, that's kind of gone now. Everything is programmed from a single source. So what happens is that you don't get that flavor of music that's regional like you did in the day when we grew up, right? We had, like in the soul version, right? We had soul stations along the East Coast, and each soul station had its own program director who played music for that particular audience. We don't have that anymore. And rock was the same way, and metal was the same way. We just don't have now. We've got some guy that's high up on the hill who determines what's going to be played and what's not going to be played. And that is going across, hundreds of stations. So we just don't have that anymore. That I don't like. I do think that definitely, that's another reason why I'm kind of critical of today's music. And of course, the last thing is quality. I break quality into two areas, right? There is production quality, and there's the actual quality of the music itself. Now, from the production quality, we like to think that our music was better, and it wasn't. We had 8-bit, we had a lot of noise, we had analog tape, it just, oh my gosh, the worst thing ever was a cassette. The cassette had no fidelity whatsoever, So from the production perspective, today's music is a whole lot better. Now, from the quality of the music, it's not even close. It's not even close. Like I said, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Santana, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. What is the one thing they all had in common that they don't seem to have today? A lot of these musicians today, they don't play any instruments. They cannot play their instruments. The singers cannot sing. And I'm really talking about especially the male singers, We don't have today, we don't have the Luther Vandross. We don't have the Steve Perry, who I thought was amazing, We don't have those type of singers today like we did in the past, because all the males, they want to rap. Now, from a standpoint of the women, I do think that that's not too bad. We've had some great women singers in the past, and today, we do have quality singers like, Christina Aguilera and Adele and people like that. These women can sing. There's no doubt about it. And of course, we're also fighting from our oldies guys. We're so resistant to auto-tune. We just think that auto-tune is just the worst thing that ever happened to music. Well, it's not. But we like to think it is. It gives us something to blame, right? Which is interesting because whenever we think of autotune, we always think of Share and Believe or the T-Pain sound, and that's a snippet of autotune, but that's not all of it. Autotune is on everything. It's on everything. Did we do something like that in the past? Yes. What we did in the past is we did multiple takes is what we did. We had multiple takes of the song, right? To get it right, because nobody wants to hear a song with a bunch of flat notes. It just doesn't work that way. So they spent hours and hours in the studio in the past in getting the vocals right or getting the passage right, which today they don't do that. They just kind of slap some auto-tune on it and push it out the door. That's also a financial decision because the investment of music back in our day, as I understand some other stuff I saw where maybe the top albums back in our day, the record company may have put like 250 grand up to make that album, right? And nowadays, they're just not inclined to do that. The bean counters are out there and they're going, you know what, let's put this sample out here and let's just get this thing moving. So the investment's not the same, which means that the quality of the music is not the same. And again, like I said, from a production perspective, yes, I think today's music is much better. But from the actual music itself, the composition of music, the ability to play instruments, the chord changes within a song back in our day, I do think that was so much better. And yes, I am critical of today's music for not adopting those particular practices. The kids just don't spend the time to do that because they are a video game, TikTok, 30-second soundbite generation, which I'm sure that will change over time, but for right now, that's where it is. So those are some of the reasons why I think that our generation, we are so critical of today's music, and not unjustly so. We have some valid points. And if you have some points that you also think would be noteworthy, right? Fill that comment section up, man. I want to know what you guys think about what I just said today. And hopefully we can get a good dialogue going. I'm not sure we'll solve anything, right? But at least we can have some fun having a good discussion on why our previous generation is so critical of today's music. I'll see you guys later. Okay, have a great day. Bye.